What is going on, everyone? My name is Under the Radar, and welcome back to the Draft League Viabilities. Now, before I go ahead and get into this week's videos, I kind of wanted to give a really quick shout out to the two guys that really help out with this series a lot. The first one is Keyno. Keyno does all of the thumbnails. Every single time that I need any thumbnail done, I ask him, and he just does it. He is one of the nicest people in the entire world. I love the dude to death. I'm leaving his link in the description down below. Make sure you guys go follow him on Twitter. He's an amazing graphics artist. He's absolutely amazing. Make sure you go check him out. The second one I want to talk about is RhyQuinn. RhyQuinn did a lot for this series recently. He made some new graphics for like the in-video stuff, and he gave me a couple of suggestions to up the quality of the video a little bit, and I really look up to RhyQuinn as a content creator, so I really took his suggestions to heart, and I'm going to make sure that I add those in to this video, and let me know what you guys think of it. And if you guys like it, make sure you head over to RhyQuinn's Twitch, his YouTube. He has a I can't think of what they're called, portfolio. He has a portfolio that I'm linking down there as well. Just make sure you guys go check out every single one of the links that I'm putting down in the description below. RhyQuinn is one of the most genuinely awesome people in the entire world, and I look up to him as a lot more than just a content creator. He's just somebody that I look up to a lot. I love the dude to death. Make sure you guys go check him out. But now, talking about this week's Pokemon. This week we're going to be covering a very, very special Pokemon. In my heart, I love this Mon so much that it's probably a little weird because I've never drafted it before, but I used it all the time in XYOU and everything like that. And that Pokemon is Lucario. Lucario is such an interesting Pokemon in general because it's not frail. Base 70 in its HP and defenses is actually really decently bulky. It can live a lot of weaker hits from other sweepers, and it has base 90 speed. That's very important. I'll get into that later. But also having base 110 in attack and 115 in special attack really ups its ability to sweep through opponents and to do a whole bunch of other things that you just really wouldn't expect. So Lucario is one of the biggest threats in League format, in my opinion, when it's on an opponent's team. I say that about a lot of things. I've said that about things like Tornadus, Mega Medicham. However, Lucario does something that neither one of those threats can do. Lucario has the option to have you prep for the wrong set and lose to the other one, or you prep for the other set and you still can't handle it because it is so threatening and so strong. If you don't know what I mean, Lucario gets access to some really cool setup moves. It gets access to Nasty Plot and Swords Dance, so it's able to up both of its offenses by 2 stages in one move. Not only that, this thing has amazing priority. It has access to Bullet Punch and Extreme Speed on the physical side, and then Vacuum Wave on the special side. So if you prep for a Swords Dance Lucario and you just bring up like a bulky Psychic type to take on close combat, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a Nasty Plot Lucario and it has Dark Pulse or Shadow Ball, you're screwed, and that's your one check out the window. The only real way to check this thing is to bring a Mon that can take on both Swords Dance, Nasty Plot, Banded, Scarfed, or Sub. Sub is a very unique thing that Lucario can do that kind of just brings out the threatening. Sub honestly just makes it so much more threatening because the walls that want to switch into it are bulky Psychic types, so when it's behind a Sub, it gets up a free Swords Dance or Nasty Plot if your opponent switches out, or if it's something like a Poison type like Mega Venusaur. Subs don't always break for Mega Venusaur unless it's like an Earthquake and you're very offensive, or a Hidden Power Fire of some sorts, or some way to hit it super effectively. But if it's the standard just Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, knockoff Synthesis set, you're not going to be able to break a Sub. It can set up right in your face, and then it can 6-0 your entire team. And just the same thing, but for the other offensive stat. And that's what makes Lucario so threatening. It doesn't have to be super versatile. You have to be able to say, okay, which set does more work to his team? When you realize this, you then have to ask yourself the internal question: do I want to play with his emotions and run the other one because he's prepping so much for Swords Dance, and then I bring Nasty Plot and it does just as much work? Or do I just go ahead with what he's bringing, figure out how he's going to check it, and work around it that way? That's the beauty of this thing in League format. Most teams can't take on both a Nasty Plot and Swords Dance Lucario. It's very difficult to do. And then say all of a sudden you're prepping for Lucario, and then you're like, okay, I have to prep for this Swords Dance set, I have to prep for this Nasty Plot set covered, and then all of a sudden it's just 4 attacks, or it's Assault Vest and it lives hits, or it's Bandit and it's just a complete wall breaker. There are things that just, you can't switch into this thing 100% of the time. It's actually impossible, and when something is actually impossible to switch into 100% of the time, it's a top tier threat. It doesn't have to be in OU for it to be a very top tier threat in League format. So I mentioned a little bit about this thing's coverage, but I haven't talked about it completely. On the physical side, it doesn't really get a huge, vast move pool, but it gets enough to get the job done. Extreme Speed, Close Combat, Bullet Punch, Iron Tail. It gets access to Earthquake and Stone Edge. It can get access to things like Bone Rush to break sashes if you want to hit things multiple times. And then if they have a Ghost type that's basically their only switch into this thing, like say a Jellicent and your Swords Dance, this thing also gets access to Shadow Claw to hit that thing very hard. And there really is no way for this thing to not be customized every single week for every single team in League format. But then let's go ahead and take a look at the special moves that this thing gets. This thing gets the best special fighting type move in Aura Sphere, okay? Focus Blast sucks. I hate Focus Blast. It gets it, but Aura Sphere is better. Never misses. It's so much better than Focus Blast, and the fact that this thing gets it just makes it that much better of a special attacker with Nasty Plot. You don't have to worry about missing Focus Blast. You can just run Aura Sphere. Gets access to Flash Cannon, Psychic, Dark Pulse, Shadow Ball, Dragon Pulse. There's so much that this thing can do to hit so many typings that it's very hard to look at this mon and just be like, well, I have an easy way of dealing with this thing. The one downside to Lucario is that it's weak to a little bit of very common moves. What I mean by that is some form of priority is very important in League format, and I think, and that's Mach Punch. It hits this thing very hard because I said it's not frail, but it's not bulky. It can take a couple hits, but if you're like a banded Hitmonchan or anything like that, it's going to be doing a lot of damage, and then you have to worry about what's happening later on in the game, if you're not already set up. This thing is also very weak to Earthquake, which is a very common move that even walls can handle. So things like Fortress that you can't one-shot because of Sturdy, if you want to run Earthquake on that, it'll do a lot of damage to Lucario, and it can kind of make it a little difficult to deal with. Another thing that it's very weak to is Flamethrower, and Flamethrower is something that a lot of common walls get. Things like Clefable, they want to run Babiri, things like Blissey if it wants to be able like to run Choppleberry and then live a hit and then hit it back with a Flamethrower to potentially do some damage. It's a very easy to slap on move on things to make sure that Lucario can't set up on everything for free. So if you don't know what that means, that basically means Lucario can scare out a plethora of walls in many different ways. It can scare out the likes of Chansey, it can scare out the likes of Clefable, of Blissey, it can scare out even Mega Sableye to some extent, because if it wants to burn you in your special and you set up a Nasty Plot, Dark Pulse just does a lot of damage, and it can scare out a lot of things. So since it does that, if you want to ensure that it can't set up for free, you can run moves like Flamethrower, like Earthquake on your walls to kind of just whittle them down, and that's the only way that I've found to be successful to dealing with a Lucario. You have to kind of just not give it an opportunity to set up. There are some other really awesome things about Lucario that I think gets overlooked in its abilities. Justified is an awesome ability because knockoff is so prevalent right now. It's so prevalent in every single tier and in draft format that if you have a mon that can kind of sort of stray away from people going for knockoff because you'll get a +1 boost, and then say you're banded, you already have a Swords Dance, just go ahead and click Extreme Speed, so it can kind of sort of deter away from that. Another mon that is extremely scary in League format right now is Mega Lop. Mega Lop, and every single time I talk about Mega Lop, I automatically think of UFO. If you don't know what UFO stands for, it stands for Unnecessary Fake Out. What that means is that if your opponent's team is pretty slowish and Mega Lop outspeeds everything, you don't need to have Fake Out. You can just click Return or High Jump Kick and get the kill that you would beforehand. But say your opponent is running UFO. All you have to do is run Inner Focus. You're now not going to flinch, and then you get to run Aura Sphere and kill it, or you could run Choppleberry to ensure that you can't be hit, that you won't die from like a high jump kick or something. So there are ways to make this thing even take on offensive threats while still living hits, and that's another thing that makes Lucario just so unique and so awesome in the League format. The main way that I would like to build around Lucario if I ever do draft it, which I've considered drafting it every single draft ever, it's amazing, I would really look for a way to take on very offensive fire types like Darmanitan and things of that nature that can also carry Earthquake. So Rotoms are very cool. Rotom Wash is a very good idea with this thing. I would look for a way to just take on Earthquakes in general, and because it has Levitate, that can be a thing. If you want to pair it up with something that is also weak to fire, Skirmy could be another good thing because it can set up hazards, break sashes that might be able to stop Lucario from sweeping, and it can kind of sort of work that way. And then if you have Rotom Wash, you can take on bulky hits from Darmanitans and things of that nature. So there are ways around it. I would also strongly suggest you pair this thing up with a Baton Passer, because if you want to be able to completely sweep through a team, relying on Lucario to set up by himself can be a little scary. But if you have, say, a Gligar with this thing, now you're looking at something that can Baton Pass Swords Dances and Agilities into it without having to really worry about it. And then once you have the Agility passed into it, you can just set up the Swords Dance on its own, and then you are 100 times more threatening. If you have something like a Scolipede and they don't have the Baton Pass clause, you can set up a Speed Boost and Swords Dance and then just go to town that way. So it's very important to have hazards, a way to deal with offensive like fire and ground types, and then I think a Baton Passer is pretty cool with this thing because it can kind of sort of really throw things off. They're expecting to set up Lucario. They're not expecting to set up Gligar to Baton Pass into Lucario, and that can be a little tricky for them to deal with, especially on the spot. Overall though, I'm going to give Lucario a B+. I'm going to give it a B+ because its base 90 speed can kind of sort of hurt it, because a lot of things do outspeed it, even if it's Scarfed. Scarf base 100s, Scarf base 95s, so things like Darmanitan will still always be able to outspeed you if it's Scarfed no matter what. And unless you're set up with a Swords Dance, Extreme Speed won't be able to kill from full, and then a Flare Blitz just completely decimates your entire life. So there are ways to check it. And with berries being a thing, coverage kind of isn't the best option all the time, especially if your opponent is very comfortable with using berries. Kind of how Togevar is. He's very comfortable with using berries, so if he has something like a Reuniclus, he knows for a fact that all he has to do is put a Cobra Berry on it, and then all of a sudden, now Lucario cannot touch Reuniclus unless it's like a +4 or +6. So there are ways around it. You just have to be very creative, but to be that creative for one Mon is so threatening, and the fact that this thing can sweep super easily can kind of sort of just go to show how threatening it can be. A buddy of mine named Rizzy Pow in TBU has used Lucario pretty well in my opinion. He always has a way of looking at it like, okay, how can I get Lucario to sweep? Do I run Nasty Plot? Do I run Assault Vest? Do I run Swords Dance? And there's a lot of ways that Lucario can just be built around on a team, and it can be a main offensive threat. It can be a wall breaker, it can be a cleaner, it can be a revenge killer. It can do so many offensive things, and that is absolutely amazing in a Mon that's normally not super expensive in draft format. Well guys, there you have it. That's my analysis on Lucario. I think Lucario is really awesome. I love watching Lucario being used in League format. I want to use it myself personally, so I'm going to try to work it in PPL somehow. So if you're a PPL person watching this, don't watch this. You didn't hear that. You didn't hear that I want Lucario. But thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I want to give a massive shout out to the two people from before, RhyQuinn and Keyno. Make sure you guys go down to the description, follow all of their links, subscribe to them on YouTube, on Twitch, everything. Just make sure you go give them a massive amount of love. Another thing I've been meaning to do for a couple weeks now is I kind of want to give a shout out to two other people. I know there's been a lot of shout outs in this video, but you guys like all this Draft League content. There are two other YouTube channels that do awesome Draft League content. The first one, Kyle, K to the 2, eat his blessing, however you know him. He does a Draft League 101 series. It's absolutely fantastic. He's so knowledgeable in the format. He's very, very good. And everything that he does, I kind of do differently. So it kind of gives you a little wiggle room on what he does. He likes to play super offensively. I like bulky offense, living hits, and hitting things back very hard. So he can kind of sort of show you guys a different way of looking at League format if you would like to get more opinions on it. The other one is TheTokenMinorities and Crobat for the Win, Danza. He Those two do a drafting with the elites. They take a core every single week and then they build around it. They build an entire draft of like 11 mons and kind of give suggestions as to what to look for with the specific core. It can really be helpful for a lot of beginners or a lot of people that are just looking for a new way to draft or a new core to use in draft league format. So if you guys are interested in that type of stuff, make sure you go over to the TokenMinorities channel and check it out. I'm going to try to have 2 videos right there and right there to show their videos, and that way you can go over and click on it and make sure you guys would give them some support for me. I would greatly appreciate it, and I know they would love the support as well. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.